You're watching The Ready Writer, a show where I get to speak to writers of all different genres, mediums, and experiences. The Ready Writer. Are you ready? Hi, and welcome to another episode of The Ready Writer. I am with author, playwright, songwriter, and poet Dr. Bruce, who tells us about his book Timeless Deja Vu. Let's take a listen at our interview together. Were you always intending to be an author since your childhood, or was this something that just kind of happened along the way?
No, I think from a young age, early age, I was writing, making little storybooks. I started typing on an old manual typewriter when I was 8 years old, typing letters for my dad who couldn't write in English. And so, yeah, I think I knew, and my parents knew from the beginning. That's what I was end up doing.
When did you take the plunge to actually decide to do it?
In terms of publishing,
Yes.
I didn't publish my first book until after I finished my doctorate in history. So I took my dissertation and I turned it into my first book, and that was in 1993.
So basically, you can say this was just something that was like there was never a time
Yeah.
where you thought of being anything or something else.
Yeah, it was what I was meant to do, and I know it's what I was meant to do. It's my calling, and even my job as a professor, I'm basically a storyteller, history professor, and so writing comes naturally with that. So I found the right profession. I tried other professions, just didn't work out. The business world, the military. I didn't quite fit in, but this is where I fit in, and I know this is where I can make my mark and make a difference.
Awesome. So when you first ventured into the publishing world,
Mhm.
was did you already know what you were doing, or did you have to figure it out? And what steps did you take?
Yeah, no, it was with a traditional publisher, Greenwood or Prager, and they're an academic publishing house. And they're they're sticklers for. I mean, we went through so many edits, with editors. I was a little bit surprised by how much there was, and how I thought my writing was pretty good, but when it came back redlined, I thought, oh my gosh, this is I have a lot to there's a lot to improve. But every time you go through a real careful editing process, you learn. So I think it's good. It might be a little painful at first, and then you realize these people, all they do all day long is edit other people's writing. So there's the creative aspect to writing, and then there's the technical aspect, and it's very difficult to master both of them. But the more you write, the better you get at the technical part of it, and then pretty soon it doesn't stifle your creative part of your writing. You don't think about it, you just do it, and then you hand it over to an editor, and they're going to do what they're going to do. So I mean, I try to make it as clean as I can, but there's always something that you just don't catch.
Right. Yeah.
You
Talk about
can't let it deflate you. In other words, once you see all the edits.
right. I understand.
Yeah.
Talk about your latest published book, Timeless Deja Vu.
Yeah, well, it's a departure for me. I actually, the last three books I published, other than my comic book, were paranormal books. Now that was a departure because I'm a history professor. I've been teaching for 30 years, teaching college history, and it was in 2016 that I had a vision, and this is not unusual for me. My whole life I've had paranormal things happen to me. And a friend of mine who had recently passed away, he came to me in a vision and he told me it was time to tell my stories, all my ghost stories, my paranormal stories. And I was always afraid to, because whatever job I had, it just wasn't appropriate to be talking about this stuff, as much less publishing it. Just a few friends I would tell, but very select group of people. So my friend Gene came to me and said, it's time to tell your stories, and even gave me the title of the series. It actually became a trilogy called Timeless. So there's Timeless, Timeless Deja Vu, and then Timeless Trinity, the last one. And each one progressively got more into, well, there was 89 total stories in these 3 books. And each book got a little bit deeper into these weird events that have happened in my life. And so but I was reluctant and I was afraid, and because I was afraid of that somebody would, that the administration at the college would fire me or find a way to get rid of me, retire me early. My colleagues would abandon me and my students would laugh at me. That's what I thought would happen. But Gene said, don't worry about it. You'll be surprised how accepting people are. And he was right. And I'm also towards the end of my career, so I have a tenured position, and I'm going to retire in a couple of years. So it's not a huge risk at this point. Whereas if I was at the beginning of my career, I wouldn't have done it at the beginning of my career. So I had to be in this place in life in order to do it.
So have you ever thought of, so what genre is this Timeless Deja Vu under?
Well, it's paranormal autobiography or memoir, I guess. And so in that case, writing nonfiction is not surprising for me, because all my previous books, except for one, were all nonfiction history / political science. But they were serious, not that paranormal isn't serious, but more traditional topics like women's leadership. I did a textbook for history, the Vietnam War, foreign policy, stuff like that. I mean, it was just more traditional. So I really did, leave that traditional world behind of writing and delve into what's been important my whole life, that's been going on behind the scenes that I couldn't talk about. And that's exciting. It's liberating. And I think for an author, I think your best work is when you feel liberated and you're not afraid to publish and say what you want to say. And keeping in mind, we have a big responsibility as authors to tell the truth, and the truth that that we believe to be the truth. But oftentimes that can be very risky. But with great risk comes great reward.
So during your process of writing and publishing, was there anything you learned that you wish you would have known beforehand that you would tell someone who's just starting to get into the business?
I would say to know your audience and dare to be bold. Even though it would have been a risk, I wish I would have written these books a little bit earlier in my career, because what I found out, well, just in general, I think to take those risks and reveal the truth as you know it. And I think that's really important, to be authentic, not to be a copycat of trying to write like somebody else. Although it's hard not to pick up different styles of writing that we admire. I mean, that's what everybody does. We're on the shoulders of giants, in the writing, and you pick up little things here and there, and all of us have mentors as well. But finding that unique voice, that when people, if you can get there, where people read a few lines and they say, "Oh, that's this author. That sounds like this author," then you've found that unique voice, and that we shouldn't be afraid to have that unique voice. And I think that's, be true to yourself. That's number one, I think.
And are you mainly nonfiction author?
I've written one fiction novel. It was a short novel for middle grade readers called Allie's Bees, and that's a work of fiction. And I've published one comic book, which is fictional, and the second comic book is coming out. It's actually a graphic novel. It's coming out this year, and in just 2 months. It's called Snark, and it has a long history. So I enjoy, and I've written a lot of short stories throughout the last 50 years, I guess. And I enjoy both kinds of writing, nonfiction and fiction. And my friend and mentor, David Wilson, he once told me, he said that fiction is more true than nonfiction, because in fiction you can add what has happened to you, but disguise it in different characters, and all of our experiences that we're too afraid to write about, or people that we fear retaliation from, we can hide them in characters, and at least elements of them, composite characters. So I enjoy the freedom of fiction, and I enjoy nonfiction. And I've also written 10 plays, which are based on, almost all of them are based on historical events, either that happened to me or historical events, but then I fictionalize it and dramatize it. So all three of those kinds of writing, well, I guess comic books would be its own unique thing, because it's sequential art. You're telling word pictures, very little, words, but a lot of, images. So that those different modalities, those different types of writing, I've enjoyed all of them. And poetry too. I enjoy poetry. I'm not going to say I'm a poet. And I write song lyrics too. So I think it all comes together. If you free yourself to go whatever way the muse is pushing you. And, I always feel compelled to do something. I can't just sit down, I'm going to write a novel right now. What will it be about? Oh, I don't know. Let me think of something. It has to hit me like a lightning bolt, and then I can't stop writing. I have to, it's like you're possessed by or obsessed with that idea. And I think that's the best writing, is when you feel that way, compelled to do it, driven.
So were you able to get any of your plays produced in theater?
Yeah, the fourth one, or no, I've had 6 plays produced, actually 5 plays produced. The 6th one, we do our first performance, and it's in a different format. It's called a stream play, but I'll explain that in a minute. But yeah, I've had, I'll just say 6 plays produced, 2 in a traditional way on stage, and the last 4 are what we call stream plays, where we do it online, live, with remote actors due to the pandemic. And we're going to be performing for a school in East LA on Wednesday the 17th. So the 6th, 7th, and 8th graders are going to see this story that's actually based on this children's novel that I told you about, Allie's Bees. We're going to do that Wednesday. And but my first 2 were traditional on the stage, and the first one I wrote got 2 awards from the Kennedy Center American College Theater Festival. That was in 2013. And that was based on a story, on a real life story of a friend of mine who committed suicide. He was a Vietnam vet, and I was very torn up about it. And I was trying to figure out a way to tell his story, very compelling story. And it just turned out to be a play, is how I would, write it. And I hadn't really written a play before. So I had to take some classes and found a playwriting mentor or 2. And then was able to do that. And the second one was based on my family history, but then I fictionalized certain parts of it and dramatize it. And that one, we performed here in LA, and then we were sent to Norway. The Kingdom of Norway paid for us and the whole, all these student actors to go to Norway and perform there. So that was really exciting. And they were on national TV and stuff over there. And it's a small country. There's only 6 million people in Norway, but still it was a big deal for everybody. And so I love playwriting. And yeah, I like all forms of writing. I really do. I don't know which is my favorite. Right now, I guess comic books are kind of my favorite, because it goes back to how I learned how to read. A lot of people I've talked to have said comic books helped them learn to read, and they definitely did for me.
Amazing. And what about your songwriting? Do you just write lyrics, or have you offered them to musicians?
I've had a band since I started teaching at Citrus College in 1998, and I taught other places before that, but this is where I've settled. And there was a bunch of teachers and people that worked at the college, and we got together in a band, and we, my friend and I, the two that have been with the band the whole time, write songs. We write the music and the songs, and and we've performed a lot of places. We don't perform very often anymore. We take like a year-long hiatus before we start playing together again. So we're not in it for the money. We're just in it for the artistic expression. And I love it. I sing and play the guitar and write music and write lyrics. And but my strength is really the lyrics. You know, that's which would make sense since I do all this other writing. So I enjoy it. It's another way of writing and expressing yourself, closer to poetry than, you know, than other forms of writing.
Back to your book, Timeless Deja Vu. Is
Mhm.
all your attention right now focused on that, or are you in the background working on another book?
Well, actually, Deja Vu was number 2 of the Timeless trilogy. Trinity was the 3rd one. But I have in the back of my head the idea of another paranormal book, but it's not going to be, I'm not going to add a 4th Timeless. It's going to be something else if I do it. But right now I'm concentrating on these comic books. And so eventually I will write another paranormal book, and based on what's been happening the last couple of years, especially the pandemic and you know, the last year. And I've done a lot of serious what I call walking meditation, and from that has come a lot of, I've been able to manage the paranormal things a little bit better these last few years, and that's probably what that book will be about when it comes out. So that'll be nonfiction, but in the paranormal genre. So I got a lot of projects circling around in my head. I got another idea for a play, but you know, who knows what's going to get to the head of the line. They'll jostle for position until one takes over, you know, and that's the one.
Well, speaking of the pandemic, I'm not sure if you were ever an author of expositions and festivals, but now that even though a lot of them are going virtual, it's still not the same, and you probably don't get the same same sales or same, you know, stuff you did when we were out and about. How have you changed how you market your books and go about doing those things?
Yeah, well, it's been tough. I feel like well, like with comic books, you got to go to Comic Cons. You know, I mean, that you got to set up a little table in a corner, something. You know, it's expensive, but that you get exposed that way. So that's something that I did get to go to one in January of last year in Pasadena, which is a pretty good size one. You know, not like the San Diego Comic Con. That's the granddaddy of all Comic Cons, but that is a really good way to get your name out there and get recognition. For the paranormal books, there's so many different conferences, and especially in the UFO genre. I was scheduled last year to be at Contact in the Desert, which is the biggest UFO conference in the world, and then the pandemic hit, and then they canceled it. But I'm scheduled to be there virtually. They're going to do a virtual one in the end of June, so I'll be one of the speakers there. And of course, I will have my books, the last 3 books, you know, which are, you know, not just dealing with alien UFO topics, but also, you know, paranormal in general. But yeah, those things are great. If you can get these speaking engagements at these conferences, because that's like a laser targeted audience for you. There's not a casual interest in somebody who goes to a UFO conference. You know, there is a deep interest. And I think you're right. These conferences are probably the best way. Other than that, I mean, just social media, word of mouth. You know, there's so, you know, having a publicist helps, a decent one that, you know, that does a good job and gets, you know, together with folks like yourself, nice people like yourself. So just as much as you can get out there. But I've always told people that are starting, you know, people ask me about publishing, and I say the writing is easy compared to the promotion. The writing, once you've written it and it's as good as you can get it and you get it out there, you're done with that. But now comes the hard part. Now you got to get, you know, other than your friends and family, who else is going to read this thing? So you got to get it out there, and it just doesn't happen automatically unless you're, get struck by lightning or something and you get on the Today Show or something. I mean, there's you have to work really hard, and it's something you have to do every day. I've learned you just have to do. You got to think that way, like a marketer. You have to every day. What am I doing to promote my work? Not from a greedy sense, but just it was important enough for me or for whoever to write it. So you want people to read it, and if you make some money off, that's great too. But I've never thought that was the purpose of my writing. My purpose was to get the word out and the stories out, and hopefully make a difference in somebody's world, in their life. And I think that's at the base of all real writers. And all the other stuff is nice. It's like icing on the cake, but I like the cake too. So.
My last question for today is, if you could think of any author, whether they be dead or alive, that inspired you, or you just like the way they write, you like their books, and you can sit down and have a chat with them on anything, who would this author be and why?
Oh man, there's so many. Well, I mean, just from the get-go, I loved Mark Twain, and the humor. And I try to put humor in everything, even in very serious topics. I've had serious plays about suicide, in the Vietnam War, and I've always tried to bring humor into it because, I think the thing about humor is that just behind the surface of humor is tragedy, and that's why we laugh. We kind of laugh at ourselves, and our foibles and things that go wrong. I mean, that's a survival mechanism. So I think that that's really important, to keep a sense of humor, and I had a Hollywood actress, TV actress. She's been on a lot of shows, and she saw my production, The Bronze Star, my first play, and she said, it's such a serious topic, but you were right to bring in humorous elements. Otherwise, people would just be crying through the whole thing. You got it. I mean, the mask of the two masks, right, of drama, laughing and crying, right? So you have to balance those things. So Henrik Ibsen, speaking of drama, Henrik Ibsen, because I'm Norwegian, my parents are from Norway. And so Henrik Ibsen, the playwright, who's the number one or the number two playwright in the world behind Shakespeare. And he challenged people and audiences by writing about women's liberation in the 1800s, which made it where they banned some of his plays, like A Doll's House was banned for production because he was so progressive. So I like almost any kind of author that challenges, the norms. I like Richard Wright, Native Son. He was a WPA author, funded author, African-American author, great, brave novelist. Yeah. So anyway, there's so many. It's hard to pick which one.
Well, that's all the time we have today for The Ready Writer. I want to thank our guest, Dr. Bruce, for joining me and sharing his time and his story with us. And of course, you, the audience, the viewers, thank you so much for taking the time to watch another episode of The Ready Writer. Have yourself a wonderful day.